House Speaker Paul Ryan was joined by other House Republican leaders this morning after their weekly party meeting. Speaker Ryan was asked by reporters about the upcoming legislative schedule. Here's a look at that 10-minute news briefing.
Good morning, Bill. Morning, everybody. The American people, they sent us here to find common ground and to advance the nation's interests. This week, we will take up two bills that are a product of formal House-Senate conference committees. This is the way things are supposed to happen. This is regular order. This is the committees doing their jobs, members serving on conference committees and hammering out an agreement. And this week, we're going to have a highway bill, which will help families and workers by rebuilding our infrastructure and giving a boost to our economy. And then we will have the education bill, which will help parents and students by returning power to the states and schools through common sense conservative reforms. These are good bipartisan victories that we look forward to delivering on in the coming days. I also want to express my condolences to the families of the victims of Friday's shooting in Colorado Springs. What happened is appalling, and justice should be swift. Clearly, we can do more. And one common denominator in these tragedies is mental illness. That's why we need to look at fixing our nation's mental illness health system. An example, Tim Murphy, congressman from Pennsylvania, has a bill that is working its way through the Energy and Commerce Committee. I'm sure that members of both parties have lots of ideas in this area, but we should make this a priority to prevent the violence and to protect our citizens. With that, the leader.
Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. This week on the floor, we've got a lot of work done. A lot of work to finish up. You have the president leaving Paris, and you also have a contrast. I know when the Democrats were in the majority, they tried to pass cap and trade. Many of you wrote the story that was one of the reasons they lost the majority, because the American people were not with them. I noticed what the president is proposing now, a regulatory cap and trade. You'll see a disapproval, not just for the Senate, but in the House as well. One thing that I found that probably the president did not talk about in Paris is a success story in America. EPA did a study on greenhouse gas, CO2 emissions. From 2005 to 2013, some of the biggest growth times for America when it came to fracking for our natural gas and crude. We lowered our CO2 emissions by 9%. It was the largest of any country in the world. We have proven with innovation and a free market, we can have a clean environment, but have a strong economy at the same time. I hope that story gets told. Also on the floor this week, which the Speaker talked about, we found the process is working. When we will have the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and we'll also bring up the highway bill. A place where everybody could participate, a conference come, and a plan for the future. There is a difference of where we're able to go, and there's a difference to one side listening to the American people. That's why you also see our task force on Homeland Security meeting again today to talk about the visa waiver program. I know we had a very successful vote, bipartisan, before we departed. I think there's more success to happen to keep America secure, and we'll have that meeting today.
Last week, the president signed an important piece of legislation that we sent to him, the National Defense Authorization Act. There were many important components of that bill that strengthen America's national security. But one of the components in that bill requires the president to put together and lay out a plan to defeat ISIS and to submit that plan to Congress by mid-February. While the president continues to talk about the national security threat posed by global warming, the American people want more focus put on the strategy to defeat ISIS. And in the House, we've been focusing on national security and energy security and jobs in the economy. And this week is no difference. In fact, we're going to be bringing legislation to the floor to continue that focus on all of those different components, continuing to focus on national security, just like the bill we passed 2 weeks ago with a veto-proof majority to actually require vetting of refugees that come to America. But then also when you talk about energy security, not only is it important to our economy, when you look at the architecture of abundance that we're going to be bringing to the floor, but it's important to our allies all around the world. One of the amendments that's going to be brought forward deals with lifting the ban on oil exports. This is something that will not only create thousands of good jobs in America, but actually give us the ability to help our allies around the world who don't want to have to get their energy from Iran or from Russia. Now they'll be able to get that energy from America, creating American jobs and helping our allies around the world at the same time. And then, of course, when you look at some of the regulations that we're going to be addressing with the Congressional Review Act, this new source performance standard, yet one more example of unelected bureaucrats over at the EPA trying to bring forth regulations that will kill jobs in America and increase energy and other costs on hardworking taxpayers who are trying to struggle to get by. That money ought to be in the pockets of hardworking taxpayers so they can buy Christmas gifts for their families, not to send more money to Washington because of radical regulations. So again, good, important legislation the House is moving to focus on national security, energy security, and jobs in the economy.
Well, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. And it's really, it gives us some time to reflect on the tremendous blessings of being an American and what this country has to offer. And for me, it really is a time to recommit here on Capitol Hill to ensuring that every person has the opportunity to fulfill their version of the American dream. And as we approach the week ahead, there's a number of bills that are really important in that effort. The architecture of energy abundance. And for me, coming from the Pacific Northwest, I always like to highlight the important role that hydropower also plays in meeting important energy needs in this country. Hydropower is clean, it's renewable, it's affordable, it's reliable. You know, we could double hydropower without building another dam in this country, simply by encouraging investment in technology and streamlining the permitting process. And in addition to that, we could create hundreds of thousands of jobs. There's all kinds of bipartisan, common sense solutions. It really is about unleashing Americans and American ingenuity. I'm proud to be a part of what we're advancing this week, making government work better for those that we were elected to represent.
Thank you, Michael. Time and time again, the president continues to govern through regulation, believing the power of his pen is more important than the will of the American people working through their elected representatives here in Congress. The latest executive overreach from the president's administration has been more overbearing and unfair regulation from the EPA. Their new harsh rules stifles job creation and threatens our economy. For example, under the EPA's regulations, electrical utility companies in my district will have to spend huge amounts of money to meet the new bureaucratic requirements. Unfortunately, most of this cost will be passed on to their consumers, hardworking families, and senior citizens in Kansas. That's why we are voting to strengthen our energy security infrastructure and promote job growth by stopping harmful regulations. We'll continue to stand with the American people against these unforgiving regulations of this administration.
I'm honored to be here this morning to talk about H.R. 8, the North American Energy Security and Infrastructure Act. You know, many of America's energy policies have been based on a belief dating way back that America's energy resources were scarce. If this president and his administration has their way, they'll make our energy resources even more scarce, shutting down the coal industry, slow-walking our ability to go after the large reserves of oil and natural gas that we have. H.R. 8, the North American Energy Security and Infrastructure Act, begins to reverse that in a big way. In addition to securing the reliability, the efficiency, and the cost of our energy grid, this is a real economic boom. Look what would happen, for example, if we're able to move more expeditiously with liquid natural gas exports. Experts tell us that we're looking at tens of thousands of new jobs, billions added to America's economy. And you've already heard from others this morning about the foreign policy leverage that it gives America. We have an opportunity this week, and the House is going to take it. And we believe that the Senate will follow suit to reassert America can be energy independent and secure, and we can provide our own energy. We don't need help from the Russians, from OPEC. We can do it right here at home. I'm proud and honored to stand with my colleagues to do exactly that. Thank you very much.
Questions?
You had a meeting recently with New York representatives about the Zadroga Act. Are you confident it'll pass by the end of the year and
Yeah.
be fully funded? And what vehicle will it move?
I won't go into the. We have not decided what vehicle it will be or what funding level, but it is something that we do intend on getting done by the end of the year.
Speaker, why would we not anticipate some sort of a standoff with the administration on environmental riders or Planned Parenthood or something in the alternative?
Look, we obviously have different opinions on all of these big issues. Those negotiations are ongoing right now. The last thing I want to do is get ahead of our Appropriations Committee, which is taking the lead in those negotiations.
Speaker Ryan, climate change. There's a poll out by the New York Times showing that a majority of Americans think the United States should join some kind of international agreement to address the issue, and 2/3 of those in the poll say that there should be some kind of legally binding provision in there, which is what the president called for this morning in Paris. Is Congress out of step with the public opinion?
I don't think we're out of step with public opinion wanting jobs, wanting economic growth, weighing the costs and the benefits. And I think when you weigh the costs and the benefits against these so-called legally binding obligations, they don't add up. I think it's very clear. People want jobs. Look at the legislation we're bringing to the floor just this week. We can become an energy independent country if we set our minds to it, if we allow the power of the entrepreneur and innovation right here in our country to occur. This is fantastic legislation that will create jobs, more take-home pay for working families, and improving our foreign policy, making us energy independent. And oh, by the way, as Kevin mentioned, can improve our environment. These are the win-win-win kind of issues that we need to be advancing, not win, lose, lose like these other ideas. Up in the back.
Speaker Ryan, you said that part of the response to the Planned Parenthood shooting, the Murphy bill is relevant. Can you explain how that bill gets the problems that might have been exposed by that?
Well, I'll let the Commerce Committee and Congressman Murphy answer the questions about his bill. The point I am making, though, is the common theme with these kinds of shootings is mental illness, and this is something that we should not be ignoring. This is why we've been working very diligently through the Commerce Committee with Congressman Murphy, a clinical psychologist, to advance legislation overhauling we need to overhaul our mental illness health system. Congressman Murphy has put a very comprehensive effort underway. He's put years into this. And that is why we want to see this process all the way through. And this is something that requires our attention.
Last question.
The House has a number of major bills to pass by the end of the year. You mentioned the comprehensive highway reports. There's the omnibus, the tax incentives upcoming. You've said before that on major bills that you commit to a majority of the majority. Do you think that on all those bills that's feasible?
We'll see what the votes look like. We're whipping right now. We've got 2 big conference reports coming up this week. We expect to have very good majority support on both the highway bill and the ESEA bill. These are great conservative education reforms. I think it was quoted in the paper yesterday that this is the greatest devolution of power back to the states in education in 25 years. That's impressive, and that's why I think a majority of Republicans will be supporting it. The other issues have yet to be resolved, and we'll see how the process goes. Thank you.
House Speaker Ryan sporting his new Thanksgiving-grown beard. The Hill's Scott Wong tweeting out, Speaker Ryan unleashed the beard. Now this news reporting that Paul Ryan is the first House Speaker to sport a beard in 84 years.